Good morning. This is another episode of See It Through with Dr. Anthony Sutton, where we talk about things to inspire, uplift, and motivate our communities each and every day. Today we're going to be talking about the tune-up before the turn-up. That's right. We're going to be talking about the tune-up before the turn-up. So a lot of times when people talk about the turn-up and exactly what is the turn-up? The turn-up is that time in our lives where we enjoy the fruits of our labor, where we party, we get down. We do, as the young people say, we turn up. And I had this conversation last week with some young people, and we were talking about what turn up really is. Like, what is the turn up? And they really talk about something, a sense of enjoyment, a sense of enlightenment, of partying that really surpasses like a simple, just day-to-day hanging out, but it's something that it's on a whole nother level. And so I thought about that. I said, that's interesting because in order to truly turn up and in order to truly enjoy that, there has to be some type of tune-up first. And so today what I want to talk about is what I've done in the previous workshops. I've done some previous workshops where I've actually used this title, the tune-up before the turn-up. And we've talked about tuning up certain areas of our lives. One of those areas is health, one is education, another is relationships, and also having some type of visual tune-up. And as always, I always like to send a shout out to those who have continued to support us and who support MDI Prep, who support Dr. Sutton and See It Through. So I want to send a shout out this morning to our good friend, Dr. Heather Brown, orthodontics. She has a wonderful nonprofit that she does, and she's has a wonderful practice. But every year she has these dental interns that come in. I think they're high school and some college students that come in, and they basically intern with her during the summer. And I've had the opportunity to speak to them the past few summers. And let me just tell you, these are some very talented young people. And so we want to send a shout out to Dr. Heather Brown, orthodontics. That is Dr. Heather Brown, orthodontics. We want to definitely thank her for all of her support, which she's also done for our MDI Prep students over the years. And so we're talking this morning about tune-up. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is our visual tune-up. So before we can actually turn up, we actually need this visual tune-up. And how do we get that visual tune-up? A lot of it is done through, some people do it through prayer, some do meditation. But it's so important that we have a vision for our lives, for our families. And I remember, I've told people about, when we talk about the book, See It Through, Hustle for Success. And I've had people ask me, what does hustle actually mean? What does that acronym hustle actually mean? Well, the H in hustle is basically handle your business. That's the H. The U is unlock your potential. Because each and every one of us has an amazing amount of potential that we have that can actually accomplish some really great things. The S is step up to the plate. Because at some point, we have to get off the sidelines and we have to get into the game, and we actually have to make it happen. Because I believe that a lot of things that we have in life, the things that we can actually accomplish, can only be accomplished once we do something, once we actually put what I call that kinetic action into motion. The T is basically turning your mode into penicillin. You know how sometimes in our lives we look back and we say, man, that was bad. I shouldn't have had that. That shouldn't have happened. Well, actually, I always look at these things as those were just modes, right? And if you think about penicillin, penicillin is a product of mold, and penicillin has become such a great scientific breakthrough for everything from syphilis to bacterial infections. But all of this came from something that was once considered bad. So what we need to do is look at those things in our lives that we may look at them as they weren't that good or whatever, but there was something positive in those moments. I heard Master P say this one time, and I really liked it. It basically talked about whenever you look at the L, don't look at the L as a loss, but look at that L as a lesson. And just like the same thing with the mold is not, it may look bad, but there's some positive things that are in that mold that we need to take from. The other thing is the L. L is leap without regrets. One of the interviews that I've done on a recent radio show, they asked me, did I have any regrets in life? And the truth is, I don't regret anything that happened in life because I do believe that everything that's happened has happened for a reason. Now, did I want them at that moment, at that particular time? I probably not. I know I, probably did some things that at that moment I would have said, wow, hey, maybe do it this way. But when you look back and say, well, do I regret it happening? No, I don't regret it happening because it builds the person that you are. It built who I am. And I think it continues to help us move forward in these life lessons that we continue to learn. That's the best thing about being who we are, is that we continue to learn, we continue to grow, and we continue to move forward. The E is basically encourage yourself and enthusiasm. Those are my two E's. Encourage yourself, because sometimes you actually just have to, tell yourself, hey, I'm doing great. Don't wait for validation. Look at what you do and be proud of the things that you are accomplishing. And always remember that if you're enthusiastic about it, it draws that energy. That energy that you have is actually going to draw other people to you because people are attracted to enthusiastic individuals. So that is what that acronym HUSTLE actually means. So when we talk about tune-up, that first tune-up, we said we need to have some type of visual for our lives. What is the vision? What do you want to accomplish? So what is your 1-year plan? What is your 5-year plan, and so forth? And so for me, I remember when I was at the police department, and a lot of people were kind of surprised that, wow, you went from the police department going to medical school. Well, when I was at the police department, even though I was wearing the blue uniform and I was a police officer, in my mind, I still had a vision that I would be doing something outside of law enforcement at some point. And I always felt like that I would be doing something where I would be helping people. And even in high school, even in my first years of college, my desire was always to go into some type of healthcare profession, medicine. Initially, it was to be a veterinarian, but I took a different direction once I actually volunteered at a veterinarian clinic and realized that some of these dogs were not as friendly as I thought they were. So I took a different route that way. But my vision ultimately was to go to medical school and to actually put on that white coat, to be able to answer questions in a logical and scientific manner, and to be able to give service to those who need it the most. And so what the first thing I want you to do today, one of the things that I want you to think about is that, okay, what is your vision for next year? What is your vision for the next 5 years? And then what does it look like in 10 years? So let's put that vision into place. The second thing, in terms of tune-up, you can have this great vision, but if you don't have the vessel, right, the vehicle that can actually implement that vision, then we're going to have some issues, right? And what vehicle am I talking about? I am talking about the most precious vehicle that you have right now, and that is your body and your health. So your health, if you're in great health, if you're in good health, you'll be able to do a lot more with that vision that you've created. And I've had the opportunity to meet some wonderful people over the years, and one of those people that I met is Dr. Baxter Montgomery here in Houston, Texas. And I can literally say that his methodology, his thought process in terms of health has really changed my life, and not only mine, but my family's life. Is because he's very big on healthy living, healthy eating, and the benefits of sunlight and fresh air and those kind of things. And so we've had the chance to meet and talk. And I want to let you hear just a little bit. Let me introduce you first to Dr. Baxter Montgomery. So take a listen.
Houston, Texas, and my mother and father were from. My mother's from Louisiana. My dad's from East Texas, And I was the youngest of 3 children. And so I grew up mostly in the Heights and Acres Home, Houston. So if any of your listeners are familiar with Houston, they'll know what I'm talking about from those areas. When I was young, my dad told us that, hey, we're going to, build a house. And so we drove out to the house, quote unquote, house one day. And I was a little kid in the back seat. And so we drive up to this lot and there are weeds. And I get out of the car and I say, Dad, where's the house? And so I didn't understand as a kid that we were going to build a house. But the interesting thing is I saw that lot with weeds go from a cleared lot to a foundation to an erected building. And I actually participated in a lot of that as a kid. I helped hang sheetrock and that type of stuff. Of course, whatever a little kid can do. But my dad had contracted a carpenter, and he sort of subcontracted other workers, et cetera, and we built a house. The reason why I give you that example is that had a very profound impact on my life. And I think that experience has really impacted what I'm doing now. Because in essence, as a kid, I saw something built from nothing to something. And that gave me the insight to know that, in essence, you can build something from nothing. And so that's what I've been doing to some extent, every aspect of my life. I wanted to go to the University of Texas, just up in Austin. And so my dad says, well, you are, we can't afford to send you to out of state, out of the city. And so you need to stay here in town. It's more affordable. So what I did, being the smart aleck, I chose what I thought was the most expensive school in town. It wasn't actually. Another school was more expensive, but Rice was pretty expensive. So I only applied there. I got accepted. And so the rest is history. I was a biochemistry major. Went on to do my medical school training, University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. And went on to then do my subspecialty training. My specialty training at Bader College of Medicine, subspecialty training at University of Texas Health Science Center, Houston. The summer between my freshman and sophomore year in medical school, I did research with a biochemist who's looking at myocardial preservation of all things. He was looking at aspects of mitochondria and that type of thing. So I was a biochemistry major, and so I was fascinated with that. And so I started working in this research laboratory. And that was the time I decided that I wanted to go into cardiology. And so it was during my internal medicine residency, I had the opportunity to present at Grand Rounds to one of the prominent electrophysiologists in the country, Mark Estes. And there was a patient, a 62-year-old man that had a rhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, or an abnormal heart rhythm. And so we presented that case, and I was fascinated with this whole area of electrical abnormalities with the heart. And so at that point I said, you know what? I was pretty weak in reading EKGs, so I want to be an electrophysiologist. After doing all my subspecialty training, I made the decision that I would go into my own practice. I never did look for a job. So 2 years prior to my finishing of my cardiology fellowship, I began laying the footworks of training. So I incorporated, so all my moonlighting went through a corporation. So I started a business, and then I started to build a practice, started learning about what it took to open an office and build and code and the like. So I was laying the groundwork 2 years prior. So by the time I was finished my training, I'd already had a list of patients I was taken from my residency and fellowship whom I'd followed over the years. So I had a patient base lined up and the like. And so secured an income guarantee. In fact, I actually started a little mini HMO where I had about 4 primary care doctors that I started a business, and they worked under that, and I started my cardiology practice all right out of training. So going back to that experience of being a little kid, seeing that, weed-filled lot go from a weed-filled lot to a building impacted my way of thinking throughout my whole career. And so that concept of building it from scratch and to some extent doing things out of the box, I think started right there, with me as a youth. My typical practice as a cardiologist and cardiac electrophysiologist, had privileged lots of hospitals. I took emergency room call, and so I was just everywhere, seemingly all the time. And that was necessary early on to build my practice and build my patient base and the like. However, as time passed, I think maybe within, say, 6, 7 years into my practice, I started noticing my own health, maybe declining. When I say declining, my LDL cholesterol was up, my weight was up, and I always prided myself in being physically fit. In fact, I had an interest in wellness, quote unquote, early on in my training. My perspective then was that of exercise and cardiac rehab. However, as I got older and more mature in my practice, I was busy and successful in that regard, but I noticed that my health was a little bit not suboptimal, I'll say that much. I also noticed that my patients, despite all the advanced medications I was giving them and all the advanced therapies, we had defibrillator implants and various catheter ablation procedures. I was able to ablate pulmonary veins to get rid of atrial fibrillation, and ablate the ventricle to get rid of ventricular tachycardia, and implant devices. So all of these things were advancing, throughout my career. But I noticed my patients still got sicker, despite all of the advanced technologies. And so essentially, I said there must be something new, different. Around the time my mother's health started declining, she had some health issues. She was a diabetic, had coronary disease, and I had to manage her. And in managing her condition, I started to really realize that, this state-of-the-art health care, if you will, isn't really effective. I saw my patients decline, my mother's health decline, my own health decline. And I was always looking and reading. I started reading about different diets. In fact, I started applying many of these different diets in my practice. And they'll go unnamed, but various diets. And you're probably familiar with various names and titles and diet types. We got some benefit, but really nothing extraordinary. However, I noticed that I ran across this whole concept of plant-based foods. Now, every diet you look at, whether it's a calcium diet or whatever diet, they say eat fruits and vegetables. So it was always a common denominator, so eating fruits and vegetables. And so there were also these diets I ran across that says eat only fruits and vegetables. And so I said, that's interesting. So some diet says eat fruits and vegetables plus X. Other diet says eat only fruits and vegetables. So there's common denominators, fruits and vegetables. So as I gravitated toward this and I started running across people in the Houston area, mostly lay people, I started doing things like juice feasting and reading about that. And I did a 32-day juice feast myself and felt great and lost a lot of weight. And I noticed that when I started eating this way, my LDL cholesterol, which was 138, went down to less than 70. I didn't want to take medication. I prescribed them all day, but I certainly didn't want to take medication. So I was really amazed with this, and I started applying this therapy in my patients. And so it was quite difficult at first. I have a busy office, and there I'm sitting with a patient and writing out, diet plans and et cetera, eat this, not that, et cetera. One thing led to another. We started getting more and more success. And then the press got a hold of what we were doing. And so they came in and did an interview and talked to some of our patients. And the information went viral. Fox News, in fact, did a story, and the information went viral. That's when I started meeting doctors like Dr. Neil Barnard and Dr. Colin Campbell, who saw the ad, or someone in the organization saw the ad. They reached out to us and said, hey, we like what you're doing, we'd like to help, et cetera. And in fact, in 2009, we were able to put together a conference for the general public in that area. And Drs. Campbell and Esselstyn and Dr. Neil Barnard and Dick Gregory came, and all helping us promote the message, and that really got us, jump-started in that area and in terms of promoting this message. I like to think of that it all started back when I was a young kid, looking at that, weed-filled lot, and understanding that there's a different way of doing things. Other kids moved into a house that was already built, but we moved to a lot and built a house. And this whole concept of thinking outside the box, doing things different than the norm, I think has helped me in this whole process of going to plant-based nutrition and helping with.
That is Dr. Baxter Montgomery. What a wonderful individual who is literally changing the lives. And let me just tell you, just on a personal note. So I went to Dr. Montgomery. I must admit, I was actually in high school. I was an athlete. In college, I was an athlete. I played football. I ran track. And then, joining the police department, doing as, some police officers do. We'd have the free meals, we'd have the donuts and everything. And so my lifestyle changed, and I started eating according to that lifestyle. And I remember going from 180 pounds in college, playing football and everything, to 220 pounds, like at the latter part of my college years. And then at my heaviest weight, which was probably almost a year and a half ago, I had gotten up to almost 310 pounds. Now, now think about this. This is only on a 5'9", 5'10" frame. So I'm 310 pounds, and I'm thinking to myself, at the time, I thought I felt fine. But Dr. Baxter Montgomery told me about something. He said, a lot of us, we function in pain because we're so used to that pain. We've become accommodated, we've learned to adjust to it. And so we really don't know what type of pain we're in because we've become so adjusted to it. So at 310 pounds, I remember going to a speaking engagement, and I was there speaking, and I was looking for a suit to wear for that speaking engagement. And so I went and I shopped for a suit. I knew what size I normally wore. And so I went, I put the jacket on, and the jacket was kind of snug. And I was like, but I'll go ahead and wear it anyway. So I wore this suit to the event. They videotaped the event. And then I asked for a copy of the video. And I remember sitting in my office looking at that video, the copy of that video, saying to myself, who is that guy speaking? And at that moment right there, I realized that I needed to do something about my health. Now, there were some other things that were going on that I was kind of looking at that also was kind of alerting me to know that I needed to do something. I remember being on the golf course, and I was playing golf, and I would get winded really easily, where before I wouldn't get winded. I could walk, an entire golf course, wouldn't get winded. But I would get winded, and sometimes I was feeling like I was getting lightheaded, and so I said, okay, I got to do something about this. And I remember when I was in medical school, they talked about somebody named Dr. Baxter Montgomery. And then I had a couple fraternity brothers who had also gone to see Dr. Montgomery. And so I decided, hey, look, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and set up an appointment, go see Dr. Montgomery and talk to him. So I went to him and I said, hey, look, I'd like to do something about this weight and see what I can do to kind of become a healthier individual. He says, okay. Immediately he tells me, okay, I need you to do basically a 30-day raw diet. I said, raw. I said, what does that exactly mean? He said, well, meaning that, fruits, vegetables, raw, nothing cooked. I said, wait a minute, for 30 days? He said, yeah, for 30 days. I said, so raw. I said, well, how do you eat meat raw? He said, oh, no, I forgot to mention that. You're not going to be eating any meat also. Now, keep in mind, I've been a carnivore all my life. And so now I am literally going cold turkey. No pun intended, but I am going cold turkey for 30 days. And he's saying that literally, if you do this for 30 days, you're going to see a drastic change. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do it. Now, at that moment when I decided to do it, I knew that if I thought about it, I wasn't going to do it. If I thought about what I was going to be missing, I wasn't going to do it. So what I did was I decided to say, I'm going to take this thing day by day. Just that's all I was going to do. I wasn't going to look at how many days it was, how many days I was into it. So as soon as I got home, the first thing I did was I kind of created a meal plan. And he also, what the good thing about Dr. Baxter Montgomery is that he actually has a meal plan. They have a kitchen at their clinic. And so I basically took the meal plan that he had, those suggestions, and I started that day. I started off with juicing. I started off making me some smoothies, and I continued that. And I remember about day 7 is when I finally realized that I'm actually doing this. I'm day 7. I haven't had any meat. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And the cool thing about it is that I was feeling amazed. I was really feeling really, really good. And without even any test, you didn't have to give me any LDL test. I didn't have to check my blood pressure. I knew physically that I was feeling much better and that those numbers would be better. Now, keep in mind, I had been on blood pressure for over, I think, 12 years. And even though it was a low dose, I had been on it for 12 years. And so I remember going to the golf course, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm feeling kind of like a little off balance or whatever like that. And I was eating a lot, during the day. I'm talking about when I was doing the raw. So with doing the raw, you have to eat constantly because you're pretty much always hungry. And so I was eating like fruits and vegetables and some seeds and things like that. But I would always eat a lot. And so one day I'm on the golf course and I'm feeling like, man, I'm a little weak, but I don't know exactly what the weakness is for. And so I get home and I check my blood pressure, right? Now, keep in mind, I've been taking my blood pressure medication regularly for the last 10, 12 years. And I get there and my blood pressure is like 107 over like 60. Now, keep in mind, normally my blood pressure with my medication is like 130, like it was like 132 over maybe 84 or something like that. And so I had an appointment with Dr. Montgomery that next day. And I will go in and I tell him, I said, look, he checks my blood pressure while I'm there. And my blood pressure's, still pretty like 119 over 64. And we talk about the medication. And basically, he takes me off the medication. He says, okay, I don't want you to take the blood pressure medication anymore. Now, that's a little scary for me because I'm thinking I've taken it for all these years and I don't want my blood pressure to go back up. So for the next 14 days, I am checking my blood pressure every single day. I'm continuing the raw. I'm still doing the raw. And my blood pressure is not going any higher than 120. It's normally like 119 over 60 something. And just to fast forward this has been a year later. And my I haven't taken blood pressure in over a year. And my blood pressure this morning when I checked it was 120 over 71, which is still good blood pressure. Now, with that raw, let me just kind of tell you some of the benefits, some of the things that happened for me. My hemoglobin A1C. Now, for those who don't know exactly what hemoglobin A1C is, it basically is a look at your blood glucose over an average of your blood glucose over like a 3-month period. Okay, it's a blood test that you go in when you're doing your physical. And so my A1C was like borderline diabetic at the time. So I was like borderline. Well, after doing the raw, after doing the cleanse and everything like that, my A1C is well below it was actually well below 5.5. So which is really, really good. And then, like, of course, like I said, my blood pressure and my cholesterol, all those numbers have are really good, all within the normal range. And my HDLs, which is my good cholesterol, has increased. Now, I say all that to say that we were talking about the tune-up before the turn-up. And so part of that tune-up is our health. How do we really turn up unless we're in a good, healthy position, a good, healthy state? And so the weight, so I went from 310. You remember I told you I was at my highest at 310. After the raw, I went down to 253 pounds after the raw. And so on the maintenance, I maintained at around 259, 260. And so I'm actually going to be doing another round of raw. And I try to do it like maybe every 6 months. And so I'll do another round of raw. Now I continue to eat pretty well. Now I've implemented some fish back into my diet. But again, I did not miss anything. I did not miss meat. I didn't even miss fish or anything like that during that period. Like after the 14 days, I actually really enjoyed those plant-based items that I was eating. So first thing, so again, we're talking about the tune-up before the turn-up. So we've talked about the visual tune-up, finding out what you want to do for the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? The next thing we said was in terms of the tune-up, looking at our health, right? And I would definitely advise anybody who's interested in a healthier life to look up Dr. Baxter Montgomery here in Houston, Texas. I think that what he does is amazing, not only for health, but changing the lifestyles and everything. And one of the biggest things I thought I got from Dr. Baxter Montgomery, and it was really pretty cool. And he was talking about the value of sunlight. Just vitamin D from sunlight and fresh air. And what's interesting now with the COVID-19 and everything that's going on in the nation around the world is that in 1918 there was an influenza outbreak, and they found out that people who were more successful, like in terms of health and recovery, were those who were exposed to sunlight and fresh air. So I think that still has some relevance today in 2020 as it did in 1918, is that we really look at the value of fresh air and sunlight, getting out, walking, absorbing some of this sunlight, this fresh air, because you think about it, fresh air, sunlight, these are actually natural disinfectants. And so I think those are very, very important. So moving on to our next tune up. We said that we've tuned up so we have a visual tune up, we have our health tune up, and then there's also some type of relationship tune up. Now, relationship not necessarily meaning husband, wife. Also, every now and then we need to have our own tune ups, right? But I've also thought about how I speak to students, how I speak to business leaders about how important relationships are and actually building those relationships. So before you can really turn up in business, before you can turn up in being accepted into programs or medical schools, you have to build some relationships. And so I thought it would be important to talk about how that looks, how that building of relationships looks. So I want you to take a listen to a very important, what we call strategic relationship building.
My name is Amanda Rose. I'm a strategic connector and CEO of the Businesswoman Media. A strategic connector, well, it's pretty much someone who helps people develop relationships with other people and other brands. So opening doors where you can see there's a good fit between an individual or a company. And I know it sounds very cliche, but it is a win-win. And sometimes it could be 2, 3, or 4 different parties coming together, but they all need to win something out of that. And that's my job, is to bring them all together and do the hard work for them pretty much. Strategic connecting is very different to networking. Anyone can network. So anyone can turn up to a function, have a chat with someone else and hand out their card, and they think, great, I've made it, I'll get lots of business, when that's not the case. Strategic connecting means you need to be strategic about everything you do, from what you wear to a function or to a meeting or to work, who you speak with, why do you need to speak with them, how can you work together. Often people want to push what they do instead of saying, well, hang on a minute, what can I do for you? What's in it for the other person? So being strategic means knowing what you can do for them and knowing what they can do for you. Breaking the ice with the higher level in your hierarchy of business. It could be a CEO, it could be just middle management, whatever it is, just remember one thing, they are human. So they like to talk to other people. They don't like their time being wasted though. So the one thing you need to realize is that they've got 5 minutes, not 50 minutes. They don't need a long conversation about your life and how you got to work and how things went wrong and all these other issues. You need to know, what do they want to know, and tell them. Have that quick discussion. They need to know that when they speak with you, you've got great ideas and you don't take too long, then they'll speak to you again. Cultivating a relationship with the people higher than you in the hierarchy, it's quite simple. Be respectful and give them what they need. They are here to succeed. This is business. So they are looking at the bottom line. They're looking for success in a particular project. So you need to offer your services, whether it's for free or whether it's out of hours, and say, I'd love to work with you on this. I'd like to help with this. Add your advice. Never go with a problem without multiple solutions for them. And just take your time building that relationship. Don't suffocate them. Don't rush it. Connect with them on LinkedIn, on Twitter, possibly catch up for a coffee, go to a different function where you know that they'll be at that function, say hello, show them that you're interested in building that relationship. Trust is very important with building relationships at your level and the level above you. It's like life. A business relationship is like a personal relationship. It takes time and it takes a lot of trust and loyalty. But you also need to remember that it is business. And if you're costing someone more than you're making them, don't expect to be hanging around any longer. So you need to be very competitive and strategic about what you can offer, and constantly look for a new opportunity and constantly be providing this extra value add to the people above you, and then that trust will be built.
That is a wonderful piece about building relationships. I think that's so important because when you're talking about actually building relationships, that it's really significant because she mentioned something about value, like what is your value? What do you actually bring? And so I think it'd be important that to do I guess what we do in our workshop is we actually do a little a piece where we write down what our value is. What is it about us that makes us number one, but makes us unique? And what is it that someone would pay for? So if you get an opportunity today, just jot down on a piece of paper, what makes you unique? Who are you? And what value would you bring to, like, if you're a student, to like a medical, dental, pharmacy school, or some type of scholastic program, or if you're actually in business, or if you're looking to partner with someone in business, what value do you bring to that particular individual or company? So I think building relationships is truly important. And then that trust factor. Whatever you do, make sure that what you say is something that somebody can hang their hat on. That if you say that I'll be there at 10 a.m., then you're there before 10 a.m. They can trust that you are a person of your word. So again, this is what we're talking about when we say tune-up. So this is another area of tune-up. Now, we've talked about these three areas. We've talked about the visual tune-up. We talked about health. We talked about the relationships. And basically, we create these tune-ups for our turn-up. And even though we are suffering right now as a nation with this COVID-19, I just want to assure that each and every one of us will, you'll come out of this. You're going to come out of this stronger. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, let's be proactive. Let's be strong. Let's be committed to others. This is a time that we can actually start to actually think about what we can do to help somebody else. And every single day, our objective is to really reach out to see what the value that we have, how can we impart that value? How can we allow that value to be a benefit to those around us? And so I want to encourage each and every one of you to stay positive, stay protected, protect one another. And we look forward to talking to you again on another episode of See It Through, Hustle for Success. And as always, peace, love, and prosperity.